Councillor Nowak?
Yes.
Councillor Salonen?
Present.
Councillor Shantz?
Present.
Councillor Verbanovic?
Present.
Councillor Williams? Sends regrets, I think, yes. And Councillor Wolf?
Present.
I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chinanton peoples. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions, of course, to our community. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, there are no presentations. We will now proceed with delegations as listed on the agenda. I'll call upon Peter Wollstonecroft. Peter, I believe you're online. Good afternoon. Good hearing from you. You've got 5 minutes, if you're there. Well, we can come back to Peter. I think we've got Scott Piakowski. Actually, no, it's Brendan Sherritt. Sherritt? Brendan, pardon me? Oh, yeah. Actually, we'll go to Scott Piakowski. Scott, I know you're online there, so good afternoon. You've got 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, regional councillors, staff, fellow citizens of the region of Waterloo who may be watching. Not sure how many fans you have, but first, in case there was any doubt, I wanted to clarify that I am speaking to you today as an individual. My comments are not meant to be representative of any organization of which I'm a member and should not be taken as such. As someone who has been a candidate in 7 election campaigns and been involved in several dozen other campaigns, I wanted to take the opportunity to express my support for the region's existing sign bylaw as it pertains to banning election signs along regional roads. Under the old bylaw, candidates had to post signs on public property to be seen as competitive. This was wasteful and expensive, and it represented a significant financial barrier for candidates wanting to enter the race who may have had limited financial resources or fundraising capacity. Signs along public roadways aren't really an indication of support. Rather, they are an indication of the financial resources that candidates have. It's better to limit signage to that which is requested by property owners or on lawns, balconies, or windows. Getting permission to post signs there requires real work, and more importantly, it requires actual support. Posting and later collecting signs along busy regional roads means stopping on those roads, sometimes in bike lanes, sometimes in car lanes. In many cases, it means stopping where stopping is legally prohibited. This creates a hazard for those posting the signs, for other drivers, and for other more vulnerable road users. Think of the kinds of roads in question, like Weber Street, Homer Watson Boulevard, Ottawa Street, Franklin Boulevard, University Avenue, Old Highway 8, Herb Street, or Fisher Holman Road. These are simply not safe places for stopping to put up or take down signs. For candidates running region-wide, say for regional chair, or citywide for mayor, regional council, or school trustee, it's difficult to collect all of what our friend Mike Farwell likes to call your ding-dang signs within the 72-hour window that is allowed. Signs posted on public land are more likely to end up thrown in a ditch or flattened by mowers, making them more difficult to pick up. Inevitably, some get missed. Some candidates just don't bother. Election signs that are too ubiquitous become nothing but clutter, and we certainly don't need more of that in our public spaces. Let's continue to ban all election signs from regional roadways. It is fairer for candidates, it minimizes roadside distractions, and it's better for the environment.
Well, thank you, Scott. I don't have any questions. Appreciate your time. Peter, we'll go back to you if you're with us, Peter. There. Is he coming?
Can you hear me now?
Hey, Peter, we got you now. Okay.
Thank you. And I'll be very brief. I want to second what Scott Piatowski just said. I'm a political scientist. I taught a lot of courses on parties, election voting. So this is very much in my wheelhouse. I've been involved in over 40 elections. I've been putting up signs for a long time. I avoided the last election. Now, to the points on this motion, I point out that some people say, well, if we had signs, we'd have higher turnout. This last election in the 5 ridings in Waterloo region, their turnout in 4 of those ridings is higher than the turnout across the province of Ontario. Only in one of the ridings, Kitchener Centre, was the turnout a little bit under the provincial average. So it cannot be argued that the absence of signs was problematic in terms of the turnout. On the second point, I would argue that the absence of signs along arterial roads is good for challengers because all candidates are forced to go into the neighborhoods and meet people where they are, rather than relying upon the tried old method of putting expensive signs along arterial roads and relying upon the well-established proposition in political science that in municipal elections, the biggest predictor for success in an election is whether you won in the last elections. So incumbency matters. And incumbents have big signs and they can place them along the roads and people can see the sign and say, oh, there's Susan and there's Billy and so on. I know them, and I go and vote for them. And what we want is to have challengers and incumbents competing in the neighborhoods for votes of people who are going to vote in the election. And so I think it's great, actually, we do not have signs on arterial roads. It changes the whole electoral marketplace and makes it a much more competitive and more democratic context. And that's one of the reasons why I think there have been many new people elected to city councils and regional councils in the last go round. So in sum, I'm fully in support of maintaining the status quo. Thank you.
Okay, Peter, thanks so much. I know we've got Brent. Oh, sorry, I didn't have it on the screen. Councillor Craig?
Peter, I appreciate your commentary. I'm interested in your thoughts on the diminishing attendance at elections for municipal councillors. What do you think would enhance that? What do you think the reason is that people aren't involved?
Councillor Craig, we have a big problem in the liberal democracies, the decline of turnout, and it particularly manifests in municipal elections. We have in various parts of Ontario too many acclamations. So the declining interest is a problem. I'm very much of the view that the problem is that our school systems do not stress the value of being a citizen. And a citizen means responsibilities and means rights. And I say to anybody who will listen to me on this, that we should value living in a democracy because it's a very different kind of place than living in a non-democratic system. And if you believe in the concept and the value of being a citizen, then that means you will pay more attention to elections, whether they be federal, provincial, or municipal. So I lament the decline in turnout. Last election, I thought it was kind of sad that we got excited that we went from 44 to 45% in the province of Ontario. That is a problem, but it has nothing to do with the technicalities of running an election in Waterloo or anywhere else. It has to do with the decline of interest in the common good, and that comes from understanding that you are a citizen and you, as a citizen, have the right and the obligation to participate in the political process.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just a follow-up question. Peter, I'm glad we got you on the line. What are your thoughts about in some areas of the world, as example, I think Scotland, where they lowered the voting age on a referendum? Do you think we should be looking at perhaps lowering the voting age to get young people more involved? I would be interested in what your thoughts on that are.
I think if you lower the age, you would lower the overall turnout rate in the election. And now, if you had a well-structured citizenship course in high school, you might have a different result. I think the question really is the matter that we do not put a premium on being a citizen. If we lower the age, some people will vote, but a lot of people will not vote. We'll find out when my political science colleagues do a study of the recent election whether there was an increase in youth turnout. I think there was a little bit in Waterloo because the turnout went up about 4%, but that's university and college students who were here this time around rather than the last election, which was in June 3 years ago. An interesting question. I don't have hard views one way or another. I think, however, I will stress the importance of being a citizen, and our school systems fail to address that.
Totally agree with you. Thank you, sir.
Chair Redmond.
Thank you very much, Chair Harris. And Peter, it's wonderful of somebody of your stature and your knowledge. So I think you got it right. I really agree with your take on regional roads and whether or not there should be political signage during campaigns. I'm wondering, just along sort of the line that Councillor Craig was talking, I know there have been international studies where voters needed to register, and where voters, I think it's in Australia or New Zealand, where they are fined if they don't vote. Have you studied that in your expansive career? And do you have a view on how successful that is in promoting voter turnout?
Well, mandatory voting is a very important question. And yes, I have studied it widely. I am a supporter of mandatory voting. And Australia is the prime example of that. And people object, say, well, you get all kinds of people voting who are not paying any attention, and they're just voting not to avoid the fine. However, the evidence, as I see it in Australia, is that when people are required to vote, they actually pay attention to what's going on. They're better informed than their counterparts in systems where you're not required to vote. You know, if you have to buy a bicycle, then you spend some time looking at what bicycles are all about, and you make your best choice. So that, I think that's an interesting analogy, a fair analogy to your question.
Thank you.
Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair Harris, and thank you, Mr. Wollstonecroft, for sharing your expertise with us today. I appreciate your comments, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. I'm wondering your perspective on, I know that regional clerks commonly go into grade 5 classrooms. Do you think it would be beneficial for them to also make a habit of going into post-secondary institutions and even grade 11 and 12 classrooms to further elaborate on the differences between regional and municipal governments specifically?
Yes, I'm an educator. I believe in education. I think we need to increase the knowledge base of what people about and talk about. I listen to a lot of people, and I'm astonished at their lack of knowledge about things. I despair about it, and the only way we can address it is by having programs in our schools which get young people aware of, I'm repeating myself here, being a citizen. And I noticed in the city of Waterloo, they have a mayor for day, councillors for a day. That's an excellent program because it makes people aware about the human side of government and politics and their obligation to participate.
And so I think in addition to the bylaw that we're going to establish or reestablish today, I think it would be worthwhile for clerks to come back with potential educational awareness plans. I don't know, Chair Harris, if that could be a direction to staff or if I should prepare a motion. But I think that would be very valuable in the year prior to an election. cycle.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hunek. I believe staff are nodding their heads so they can take that back. So,
Great, thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I know we're not supposed to debate with the delegate, though I think it was opened up. I too am an educator and have taught for 38 years, and I was wondering if you were aware of the very active program Ontario Student Votes that we just had in this last election, and how high schools and junior schools took part. The number of times as a city councillor in Cambridge, we had the civics classes from various high schools come and do mock councils. I do think that the education system is addressing that and what it means to be a citizen. If you go to a public school these days, instead of just a hallway, you see kindness hall, empathy hall, all of the values that make up a good citizen. I think that the education system is not to blame for our low voter turnout. Perhaps you should look at news. Where are our younger voters getting their news? They watch Netflix, they do podcasts. They're not listening to CBC like I do every day. I think there are other reasons other than blaming our education system for low voter turnout and for not creating good citizens. Because what I see in the schools that I was contacted with, and even looking at Colleen, who just ran, they often have debates for candidates, and I see more engagement from young people and students than I do from, let's say, young adults in their 20s, 30s, than I would. And so I would say if we lowered the voter age while they're still in high school, we would increase voter turnout because those kids are engaged.
Well, if I may, Councillor Wolf, I hear what you're saying, and I'm heartened to hear what you said, and I'm aware of what you were talking about. However, I talk to a lot of young people. I go out of my way to talk to young people, and I ask them about what do you think about being a citizen? And I find that they do not know much about that. They have not thought about it. And I particularly did it this last go around when I was talking to young people in their 20s and 30s who were telling me they were not going to vote. They deliberately were not going to vote. And I simply say to them, well, what's your problem with being a citizen? And they said, oh, so I see a failure to connect the concept of citizen with the actual activity in politics, voting in politics, paying attention to politics in whatever way you're going to do it. And statistically, we do know that across the liberal democracies, not Waterloo region is not an exception to this, is that young people have much lower turnout rates than older people, and the fraction of people in, let's say, their 20s who are voting in 2025 is generally lower than their counterparts 20 or 30 years ago. Another axiom in political science, once you start to vote, you continue to vote until your 70s. If you start late in life, or the percentage is low in, say, your 20s, it's going to be lower in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. That's well-established life cycle voting pattern.
Okay, I've got two more speakers. We will enter into a report and likely have a conversation about this here as well. So just direct your questions at the presenter directly about his presentation, and we'll keep it going. Sue.
Thank you. And this is not to debate the speakers. They've had their time to speak, and I think we should go and talk about it in the council chambers now. So I was the one that suggested we relook at this, because I thought it was more costly for a new person coming on and also for a new individual that was not recognized. Now, people can say you can go door to door and get people to put your signs up. From what I've heard in this past election, people had signs put on their lawn without their awareness. And there were multiple signs put on a lawn where they did not have permission. So that's a misconception right there. And people say, oh, signs are costly. My signs cost a fraction of what it cost me to put one ad in one newspaper. One ad in one newspaper or anything else costs 10 times more, if not more, than signs. But they are ugly. They don't get picked up, and my bylaw goes around and picks all the leftover signs. No debate about that, but it's about recognition. There were other candidates that ran just in this past election but had billboards all the way down highways because they could pay for those billboards. That's better than, I mean, if I could afford billboards down a highway, it's a lot more expensive than putting a sign up on a regional road, which probably won't get as much recognition as that giant billboard. So the thing being is what I wanted for was something more fair and equitable. And what the people that I've just heard speaking, it had nothing to do with fairness or about equitable. They don't like the signs and they think they're ugly. I don't know anybody that likes the signs. I don't even know any politician that likes putting the signs up. But I wanted to make sure that we allowed for every person that had the courage to put their name forward had recognition. And you know what? They don't. They don't have the same. You've got to have money. You've got to have money for those television ads. You've got to have money for those billboards. You've got to have money for putting the newspaper ads in. The system, I guess, is always going to be unfair. And I don't know if putting regional signs up on regional roads makes it any more fair. I thought it'd give more recognition, but that's all. So I'm one of the ones that brought this back because I wanted to make it more fair because all of us sitting here have an unfair advantage. Well, maybe not, because people do recognize us, and if you don't like us, you know you're not going to vote for us. But we are recognizable. The new person coming in isn't. So that's what I wanted the discussion for. I wanted to be open discussion. I didn't want one side. I wanted to look at the whole thing and think about it logically. And odds are we probably won't keep these regional signs on the regional roads, but I wanted the discussion because that's what democracy is, an open discussion. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor James.
Thank you. Are we talking to the report now?
No, we are still asking questions
so
of the delegate.
Okay, so
because we have one more delegation left.
Okay, and just to the delegates who spoke, I think there is a shift that is happening where signs are not necessarily going to be as impactful as things like digital moving forward, having just gone through this. And I think when we look at signs, we're thinking of a historical way of campaigning, and I can say that there is a shift that's going to happen that's going to change, especially as we move to more digital. So I'll speak to the report as it comes up, but I also want to say that our staff does an excellent job of going into schools when asked starting at grade 5. I know I've spoken to students as of early as grade 1 about civics and engagement and about their voting and democracy, and also as an educator incorporating that into the classrooms that I was teaching. And so I think the apathy around voting has to come from some of the tomfoolery we see with some elected officials across the border or wherever, and their lack of distrust. So I'll speak to the report when it comes along, but I'll stop for now.
I don't see any more questions. Peter, I appreciate your time. I know everyone knows here you're a professor, and I was nodded here. Our regional clerk is a student or was a student of yours, so I think you've done fairly well with what we've got here ourselves. So thank you for presenting, and I'll call upon our next delegation, Brendan Sherritt, I believe, Brendan. And for those that just came in, lots of seats, so no need to stand. Have yourself a seat, and yeah, Brendan, you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Brendan Sherritt. I'm a resident of Kitchener, and I come here with the perspective of an active participant in election campaigns at all levels, from a voter to a volunteer to a campaign manager. And I'm here to speak against the change to the rules around election signs. Signs on public land are wasteful and don't represent the local candidate support. We found that in the report, it indicates that the amendment is working. From 2018, with 683 electoral signs removed, with an 83% decrease, resulting in 115 being removed in the last election. That is success. And when the region is trying to save money, I believe everything that we can do to reduce the load is beneficial to support some people Signs don't vote, people vote. Election signs on public property do not reflect voter sentiment. It shows that a candidate can afford more signs. And yes, signs are not as expensive as record ads, but signs in mass quantities add up, and they can add up significantly. The candidate that is focusing on their signs, they're not focusing on knocking on doors. They're not focusing on engaging with voters in different ways. It also encourages the sign wars, and I think we've all seen the poor effects of sign wars, candidates placing signs that block each other, supporters moving opponents' signs, taking them down, complaining to bylaw enforcement, vandalism. That's creating hostility. It's creating an environment where campaigns are fighting against each other instead of focusing on votes. And then the environmental impact. The council just spoke about some of their goals, and one of their goals being reducing waste, with signs being difficult to recycle, if not impossible. I believe that encouraging additional signs, especially large ones, just increases that doesn't help us towards achieving that goal. It's a poor use of public resources. Staff have clearly stated the significant time that it takes to deal with those signs, and I think that we would all agree that we would rather staff working on focusing on other core things other than measuring the distance between signs. Road safety. We all care about road safety, and election signs create that visual clutter that distracts drivers. Especially in high traffic areas and intersections where all signs want to be. Campaign volunteers are putting themselves at risk, often pulling over on the side of the road to put up a sign and creating an additional distraction both for other motorists and a danger to themselves. And then traffic safety studies have shown that there's an additional cognitive overload with additional signs that are along roads. So the more signs we have, the reduced time to stop, which we obviously want everyone to focus on. Modern campaigning is not election signs. Election signs, as indicated, are one form of engaging, but participating in social media, being there in town halls, direct engagement on social platforms like Reddit and Facebook and all these other things are ways to engage with voters, and so signs are not the only way. So in conclusion, I believe that the 2021 election sign prohibition is working. It's reducing waste and environmental harm. It's eliminating sign-related conflicts. It's freeing up municipal enforcement resources, improving road safety, and creating a fairer election process. There's no compelling evidence that election signs on public lands improve voter engagement, and the committee should uphold the current bylaw. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a question. Councillor Foxton.
Just a comment, Chair, and I was going to mention it with the report. So it's listed the number of signs that bylaw pulled from the last election or the previous one. And I'd like to note that my township pulled hundreds of signs. The region had asked them to pick them up for them. And then when we asked where we should take them, they said, you guys get rid of them. So next time that we do that, we're going to be billing the region, because bylaw for the region does not come out to the townships. They don't do it, and it costs my people. So just a heads up for that. Also, I resent that people think that politicians put up a sign and don't go door to door. I would like to almost swear and say that's, I'll use the term crap instead, because I am a one-legged person that goes to every single door, as well as putting up signs. That's the end of my comments. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Questions of the delegation, Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in, Brendan, and sharing your thoughts on this, and to the other delegates as well. I'm just curious, and I hear what you're saying about the signs and that, and I do agree with it. I'm just curious, since you're here, if you could maybe provide some of your insights or thoughts on like what would it be of assistance to people who are trying to get elected, who are not incumbents, maybe who are from equity deserving groups. Like, what sort of advice do you think, if signs aren't going to be one of the options, what how do they break into this game?
Yeah.
Point of order, Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor Foxon.
Should we not stick to the procedure of talking about the sign bylaw? If someone wants to get election information, maybe they can go to somebody else at another time?
Well, it is the ability for a councillor to ask a delegate a question of his presentation. That's what we're on now. I mean, we're going to get to the report, and I think we're going to have a broader conversation about the staff report. But I'm going to allow a question of a delegation. So you can answer.
Thank you. I believe that the stat is that 90% of incumbents are reelected. So there is not a fair playing field. And it is the fact. The way to engage with people is to start from the ground, to talk with people, to engage with people. And I apologize, I did not mean to imply that you were not going door to door, but door to door canvassing, which takes a lot of time, is one of those ways. And it's the small conversations, those table conversations, those engaging online with people and making yourself seen and heard and valued. So that is the thing that you can do to get engaged with voters. Election signs are one of those things, but they're not the only thing.
Chair Redmond.
Brendan, I really want to thank you for coming in, and I know that you've got lots of organizational experience and on the ground in campaigns. You mentioned Reddit, and I guess, again, this is connected to the signage and the fact that you feel that the current bylaw should stay in force. And I just wonder if you could comment, from my political experience, social media has absolutely usurped so many other ways, whether it's pamphlets or things. As a relatively young person who is very involved in campaigns, what would your, you mentioned Reddit, and I'm thinking, can you just talk about how we're progressing to be more of social media and moving forward in future campaigns?
Yeah. I think it was quite amazing to see in the last provincial election the amount of candidates that engaged and used. Reddit is just one platform. It's an online platform where you can engage, communicate, and vote up and down. But it was a great way of basically having a virtual town hall. It's not always fair, it's not always great, but it allows that free, you're only giving your time, way of engaging with voters. And unlike signs, which may cost $15, $5, depending on where you are per sign, this is a way of engaging with those voters and hearing them out, and similar to a round table conversation, you're listening to those voters and hearing their feedback, and they're hearing from you as well in an unfiltered way.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Okay, thank you very much for coming in. Councillor James just popped up. Councillor James.
Thank you. Just through you, Chair, to speak to some of the social media platforms and recognizing that oftentimes it may not be the candidate that people are actually speaking to depending on their team. So I think we need to really look at things more nuanced when it comes to things like social media platforms, because yes, it may seem as though there's direct contact with someone, but the realities are the amount of resources somebody has will enable a team person or someone to actually be responding, and it may appear like there's direct connection. So, I mean, with all of this, there's different ways to campaign and different ways to engage. Signs are one way, but I think as we get into a digital way and social media way, also know that all of the harm and things that can happen on social media and the appearance and presumption like it is direct connection when the reality is it may not be. So just adding a perspective in there as well.
Councillor.
No, I want to speak to the report.
Okay, we'll get you on. I think we'll get you on that report when we get to it. So thank you, Brennan. Appreciate you coming in. Colleagues, we'll move on to the consent agenda. If you wish to remove an item from the consent agenda, please indicate so now. Do we have a mover and a seconder to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councillor Fox and seconded by Councillor McCabe. Please use your yes or no button, please.
I'm a yes. I'm just having a technical difficulty.
Councillor Liggett? Okay, colleagues, that's carried. We'll move on to the agenda item 6.1, strategic priority, resilient and future ready organization. Oh, did I miss? Oh, that was consent. So you're off the hook. You're off the hook, Wayne. Number 7, the regular agenda, strategic priority, resilient and future ready organization. Election sign bylaw. We're back at it. We'll call on William Short, the regional clerk, to introduce the report. William.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Council will recall a number of months back, Councillor Foxton asked staff to look into and to bring back a report on the election sign bylaw. Specifically, there are a couple of questions surrounding voter turnout in relation to any statistics or data that was able to be found by staff on whether or not signs increase or decrease voter turnout. Unfortunately, with specifically to that information, there wasn't any data available at Elections Ontario or through AMO to collect. We pulled together the last 2 reports that were on this. In 2012, I believe there was an original sign, or 2010, 2012, there was an original sign bylaw. It was then amended in 2018 and then amended again in the last term of council in 2021 to completely ban election signs on regional roads. We talked to our bylaw staff, and I think there were some questions around whether or not there would be any more work one way or another for our staff, whether the sign bylaw stayed as it was or if it was in its original form. From our perspective, staff had the same number of calls, whether it was around removing them from regional property, from regional roads, or measuring the distance between one election sign to another. So from staff's perspective, this is really a regional council decision whether or not they want to keep the ban of signs on regional roads as is, or revert back to the original bylaw as it was before it was amended in 2021. So the information from both of those previous reports was put into this for council, and we're at council's hands with what they would like to do.
Okay, Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair Harris. Thanks for this report. Before I get into this report, I do need to point some things out as I read what was brought forward in 2021. And had I been here as a staff person at the time, I would have flagged this way before. But I want to make it clear for those who are running and reading this report, there are some very bad stereotypes that have been, in my opinion, been made public about barriers and while running, and it has to do with certain things around, and I'm going to verbatim say this, racialized and marginalized groups disproportionately live with low income that create a barrier. Very bad stereotype. And I know, I just want to flag this because I know it's not related to the actual report, but it has very deeply rooted systemic barriers and stereotypings that can impact future racialized or marginalized groups who are running. And I want to just debunk this myth. There's also language in here that speaks to low income and voters' political ideology tends to be socialist, which just so harmful when it comes to signs to think about racialized or marginalized groups from just strictly a low financial barrier. I don't think that is the thing to focus on when it comes to just finances. I think we do have to think about things like racism and discrimination. We also, the biggest thing for me was putting my picture on the sign or not putting the picture on the sign. So, when it comes to the disparities that exist, I don't want to focus in on just the equity perspective from a racialized, marginalized lens, and recognizing that if we're speaking to what was brought forward before, recognize some of the harm that was brought in this, because it was painful to see that this was put out in public, because it feeds into the systemic racism and discrimination that if you are racialized or otherwise low socioeconomic, that the financial is the only barrier to running an office. So I just want to caution this. As for the signs, like I said, the signs to me do not, they have an impact, but they are not they are not a guarantee. And I do know colleagues who had 50 signs put out versus 900 or 2,000 signs and still got elected. I think if we're looking at it just from one singular way, it's a very historic way of running a campaign. And I think there has to be looking at things from that digital perspective as we move forward. But I'll stop there, but I just want to recognize for colleagues around the table that reading this report, it's very much indicative of some of the challenges we're trying to navigate as it comes to being seen as equal and not as oppressed based on financials. Oppression can take many different types of forms. So I'll kind of stop there and let others go through the queue.
Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I agree. I'm glad that Councillor Foxton brought this motion forward or requested this, because I do believe that the status quo really supports the incumbent. And I think that in all of the campaigns that I've been involved in, and I've actually run in 7, I think, and successful in 5, and helped on many campaigns. Having signs on public property is important. Name recognition is extremely important. And as Councillor Foxton pointed out, billboards, electronic signs are extremely expensive. And they're also privately owned. And I think that we need to have some public space where people running in an election can express themselves. I do agree with limiting the number of signs on a public road, saying, you're allowed, I guess what it was between this part and this part, you're allowed 2 signs or whatever. I think that was important to cut down a little bit on the visual problems. But I think that having the ability to put your name out there on a sign is one of the cheapest ways of getting some recognition. And again, social media, the digital, that's a very dangerous world, as all of us know, and for many, many reasons. And again, we'll never have complete fairness because of the different amount of money that people get to spend. And that's why I think it is important that in the public realm, we try to make an even playing field. So limiting the number of signs, but everybody that's running can put a sign up, and allowing some of that name recognition. And, as an incumbent, I know I have an advantage, even frankly in a sign with Pam Wolf, short names. My name can be big, but, I think that, again, I appreciate that Sue brought this up, and I would like us to consider maybe going back to our original bylaw.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I note this report is for information purposes only, so I'm not sure what action you're expecting. My preference would be, and if it needs to be a motion, that no action be taken. I support our current bylaw. I think election signs are becoming an antiquated way of trying to communicate with people with so many online options that are available today. Most of the election signs today are made of a non-biodegradable product called Coroplast. It gets into our landfill site and doesn't decompose. It's contrary to one of the strategic priorities of our of the region of reduce, reuse, and recycle, and which includes plastic. So I think by permitting them on our property, we're in contravention of one of our strategic plans. Nobody can like the general appearance and clutter. Signs get put up, they get broken, they're on one leg. I think it just distracts the attention of drivers, and it's just not a pleasant sight. And I think there's some liability involved with volunteers on busy regional roads putting these signs up, parking their car on the side of the road while they're rushing, putting up signs, and there's some safety issues, I think, for the people that are doing that. There's distinctly an advantage in my mind to incumbents. They have the money, they have the signs left over from the previous elections, they know the best locations, they got the people to put them up. And so I think it's a distinct advantage to those for incumbents. But I think most important for me is they don't belong on public property. You know, if you want to put up an election sign, put it up on somebody's private property on a front lawn or at a business where it shows support. But public property is not designed to advertise for political candidates. They're private right-of-ways. They interfere with regional and municipal staffs mowing and getting around the signs in the fall, but they just have no place on public property. The support needs to be shown on private property. So I would, if you want a motion, I would move that no action be taken.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Erb. Councillor Liggett.
Wow, it's a great conversation. I would support going back as well. So for those who are starting out to try to become a representative of the people, they don't have a lot of private lawns to be putting signs on. So when we take away public lands, that's their one opportunity to have their names out there. I think when all of us started out, we didn't have a lot of money to buy like hundreds and hundreds of signs. We didn't have the support of donations because people didn't know who we were. And that's on the candidate to make sure they get out there and think about it long in advance of when they put their names out, of getting involved in the community, sitting on committees, writing letters to the editor so that people know what their philosophy is, what their thoughts are on different issues. And so that's on them. That's part of the homework. Nothing replaces knocking on doors, and we all know that. That's the thing that we need to do. And thank you so much, Colleen, for bringing forward the discrimination in this. I would never have supported this report back there. The minute I read this, I looked at this and I thought, oh my God, who put this together? It's so discriminatory. It just sets everybody up for failure. And even people who, you know, it talks about names that are not anglicized. Well, I would say that with the number of people that have come into this country since this report has been done, that's changed a little bit, but yet we're still seeing this in this report that we're looking at today. All of these discriminatory comments are still sitting in the background. I don't think this should have been part of this report because it brings this forward again. So I'm just going to switch a little bit of feet here, talking about some of the comments that were brought up when the speaker were presenting. I go to the schools on a regular basis, but I find that it's always the same schools, and that's on the Board of Education. When they have teachers in their classrooms who teach civics, so you go and you speak to the grade 5 classes, and you go and speak to the high school classes. It's always the same ones. And yet look at how many schools we have in this region. There's very, very few who actually teach it. And I am always appalled by the lack of knowledge of the different levels of the public. So if we're looking for good candidates, later on, the ones who will take possession of their responsibility, write the letters to the editor, come before council and speak, get their names out to be good candidates in the future. It starts in the school system. And I know Mr. Piakowski was a delegate. I asked him to get behind this and have the teachers have us or somebody who knows about the system come to the classes. It should be part of the curriculum. And until we get that going, I think we're going to be looking at another whole generation before they're educated enough to be voting at the age of 16. And I think that's going to take, maybe if we started it next September, the kids that are going to kindergarten now, by the time they get to that age, if they were year after year after year taught this stuff and it's spoken about in their homes, then we can get to that. But right now, heck no. Sorry, I just went on and off on a little bit of a tangent there, but there you go.
Councillor Verbenovich.
Thank you very much, Chair Harris. And I guess there's no motion on the floor yet, but Councillor Erb indicated he was moving no action. So I presume that will be the first motion that will be considered. If that motion is moved and seconded, and if that motion isn't successful, I certainly would be prepared to move a motion to have us allow signs on regional property. Again, I think it could be a limited number if that is part of the situation. However, just adding, and some of my colleagues really said a lot of the things that I think needed to be said. For new candidates in particular, having the ability to put signs out there when you don't have a big budget to work with is, one of the initial ways that you can get your name out there and be considered for electoral office. The reality is that our region is a large region. The people need significant resources in order to get known. And I think if we're truly committed to seeing a broader range of people, seeking public office, then we need to facilitate mechanisms in order to help make that happen. And so, I wasn't supportive of us going this direction in the first place with signs. And I think we need to go back to actually allowing them going forward. So if Councillor Erb's motion is not successful, I'm prepared to move one to have us reinstate them. Thank you.
Yeah, so Councillor Verbenovich, there is no action would require no motion whatsoever. And so if you're prepared to bring forward a motion, I believe the clerk's staff has wording already on that. So when I met you, do you want to move forward with that, or do you want the clerk staff to read the prepared motion that they have, or we're going to pop it up on the screen for you guys to have a look at potentially? Pardon me?
Sure. That I'm happy to move what's on the screen.
Yeah, just so everyone's clear, Councillor Erb was going to move a motion to take no action, but that is a motion that's not required. No motion, no action, yes. So Chantel, that the regional municipality of Waterloo direct staff to prepare a bylaw to repeal the prohibition of election signs or on regional roads and return to the rules for election signs that were in place in 2018.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Councillor Verbenovich, is this something along the lines as to, in your comments, you're prepared to move?
Yes, sorry, I guess you didn't hear me. I indicated I'm prepared to move the motion on the screen.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Wolf?
I'll second.
Okay. So we do have a continued speakers list. So if you don't mind, Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. I'm opposed to the recommendation. I think there's lots of places people can put signs. And I constantly hear, even in the last election, well, so-and-so is going to win in whatever riding because they've got more signs. And so I don't like that signs are becoming I don't know, a de facto endorsement of candidates. If your sign is on an individual's lawn, that means someone is supporting you. And so even a new person, we've talked about going door to door and how important it is to go door to door. And if you're going door to door, you can ask people if you can put your sign up, so whether you're new or whether you're an incumbent. So I'm opposed to the motion. I think that there are lots of places that can be found to put signs if you want signs. I don't think regional roads are good places.
Okay, Chair Redmond.
Thank you. I would just concur with my colleague, Councillor Shantz. I think there's lots of places to put signs. I have to say that as a regional chair that runs region-wide, I certainly have looked to places in fields and on road allowances throughout the region. My sign chair was really happy when this came forward, so we were able to use small signs on people's lawns. Having said that, I've still got all my signs, so if we change this, I can go back out and we will put them back up on regional road allowances, but there are many other places where you can put signs. And for me, and one of the delegations talked about this was about volunteer safety. And it isn't safe to be on regional roads. They're usually busy. Often the speed limit is a bit higher than on residential roads. And for that reason, I thought this was a matter of everybody's volunteer safety, all volunteers, not just my volunteers. So I like the prohibition on regional roads. And I would just like to commend Councillor James for raising, I realize that that's a dated report. It was 2021, which is probably longer ago than any of us realize, but I too find that wording really problematic. Thank you.
Okay, lots of interest in this topic. Councillor Nowak.
Yeah, I think I probably know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. The rules around a motion to reconsider not apply to a new council?
Yeah, that was actually a good question. That motion was approved the last term of council, so this would be under a fresh new pretenses, so it would be. And again, the report here, would only ask staff to come back for a drafting of a bylaw, and then obviously there would be another opportunity for council to weigh in at that given time. So, today, if you were to vote and approve this request of staff, it would simply be that to bring back an official bylaw, and then council would make a decision based on that recommendation at that time.
That's the answer to my second question. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. Part of where I guess I'm kind of puzzled a bit by, how the interest, the overwhelming interest in this is that, like, if we want to engage equity deserving groups and people who are generally kind of shut out or have been traditionally shut out of gaining access to being an elected official, I don't know that signs is not the way to address that problem, right? Like, actually talking to people like I think it's Run WR, who are, I think that's what it's called, like, who are actually trying to work with people, citizens, to help educate them and help support them and help get them the resources they need to understand what it takes to run a campaign or what you need to do to prepare in advance and things like that. I mean, that's really what would make a difference. I mean, particularly in municipal politics, I mean, the reality is it's really difficult for someone to beat an incumbent, right? So I think if you really, and I say this with all due respect to everybody who is an elected official across this region, like really, if you really want to help, like, one of the best ways to help somebody who, maybe is trying to break in and is from a racialized group or, you know, an equity deserving group, it's like we need to make space for them, right? That's something I think that would do far more to support, I think, the direction some people are, you know, what we're talking about than signs, right? Than adding signs. Like signs will do a tiny bit to support someone's actual campaign versus, you know, I mean, we know it's really difficult to beat an incumbent. So that's really, I think, partly where the real rubber hits the road.
Or the chloroplast. Councillor James.
Thank you through you, Chair Harris. I just want to make it clear to people, just because somebody is from an equity deserving group doesn't mean that finances and low income is the reason why someone is oppressed, okay? There is more than one way. It's not just the financial aspect, and I think that's a greater conversation around the ways systemic inequities happen. So I'm going to just park that because I want to make it clear. People look at racialized groups and think, oh, they can't afford anything, and that's not the ways in which oppression doesn't just work in one simple way, okay? As for the language, I do have a question for clerks because I am extremely conscious of how we move forward, and I know we're not in a place where we were before, technically. Is it possible for this report to, you know, we can't remove the language from 2021, but for the 2025 report, can we remove that section D that is in this going forward? I would not feel right having this sit there and not say anything to know that we're in a different place and a better understanding than we were before. And also this statement that racialized and other marginalized groups disproportionately live with low income. That it's insulting. It absolutely is. So, and it just feeds into negative stereotypes. So I would love to request that for this report going forward, that there is this harmful language is removed from this report, the 2025 one.
Yeah, clerk will want to respond to that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor James. We've been talking about figuring out how to do this, and there isn't a precedent on doing this, which doesn't mean we can't do something about it. And we were, one of the solutions that we were thinking of, should you be amenable to this, would be to make a note in the minutes of the meeting that council was, we would have to work on the wording, but objected to the wording from section blank from the 2021 report, and make a note in the minutes to reflect that, on behalf of council.
Okay. That can work. If it can't be removed, and I'm also conscious of doctoring something, but making a note as well that there was recognition of the language.
Did I just lose sound?
Councillor Hunick, you're up next.
Thank you. Sorry, all of a sudden it went silent and I thought I lost sound. In line with what Councillor McCabe was saying in terms of making room for new candidates, has regional council ever in history considered a 2-term or 3-term limit?
Yeah, Chantal or Councillor Hunick, maybe just we had a challenging time hearing you there. Can you repeat just one last time?
In line with what Councillor McCabe was saying about making room for new candidates, has council ever considered a 2-term or 3-term limit?
Well, we're on a sign report. I don't know if we want to engage, this new element.
Fair enough.
The clerk had just advised that it would be an amendment. It would be an amendment to the Municipal Act, or personal choice, for the councillor. So,
okay.
Appreciate that comment, Councillor Hunick. So, colleagues, we have no more speakers, and we do have a motion that's been moved and seconded. I guess without that, I'd ask for folks to go to a vote on this. Just Councillor James. Okay, that is defeated. So thank you, colleagues. Look, we've got a committee, the council committee tracking list is being received for information. Is there any other business, colleagues?
I just had a quick question.
There is new business. Councillor McCabe.
Well, it's just a question because I don't think I saw it on the, yeah, it's not on the tracker list, but in the budget proceedings, I had asked, we had a bit of a conversation, I had asked for a report on the amortization length of time that for debt that we take on. And so, yeah, I was just wondering when that report might come back.
So I think part of what we were going to do was just incorporate that going forward in our budget, and then also some of the work we're doing around reserve fund analysis. We were going to begin to incorporate that option for 30-year debt.
So it'll come back then as part of the when is the reserve fund analysis coming back then?
That'll be later this year, like. In June in that area, once we've completed our investment, our asset management review, we're doing a reserve fund analysis report as well.
And then so this question is, you're going to have a report on the risks or the pros and cons of it, or you're just going to add it as an option as part of the budget? I'm not sure what you meant.
Yeah, we can add it in there and just do some pros and cons. Like I got the sense that we're generally supportive of that as a council, based on the nature of the asset. So we were going to incorporate that as an option going forward, that we would have that option for 30-year debt for certain types of assets that we're getting debentures for.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay, the next meeting is scheduled for April the 8th. I would like to now start a vote to adjourn the meeting. Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Foxon, eagerly seconded by Councillor Foxon. And I'd like you to use your yes or no button to agree or disagree with that.
Just to note, we're ending when we were supposed to start.
Yes.
There you go, Councillor. You've got an hour back, as they'd say. Okay.